Memos a sacar la milla, memos a sacar la milla, Josinte. Kwame macho con shipipte, ya memos a sacar la milla, hikiyipakiya. Memos a sacar la milla, memos a sacar la milla, Josinte. Kwame macho con shipipte, ya memos a sacar la milla, hikiyipakiya. Memos a sacar la milla, memos a sacar la milla, Josinte. Kwame macho con shipipte, ya memos a sacar la milla, hikiyipakiya. Jepe makiti ayome ay kai jajinyo manogi ya jepengini jepege jiko genyo manogi jepeteli atomi nogita. Jepe makiti ayome ay kai jajinyo manogi ya jepengini jepege jiko genyo manogi jepeteli atomi nogita. Jepe makiti ayome ay kai jajinyo manogi ya jepengini jepege jiko genyo manogi jepeteli atomi nogita. Thank you.
Thank you to the Torres sisters for that beautiful blessing. And thank all of you for coming. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Museum of Science for the East Coast premiere of Ocean Voices. Musician and sound artist Halsey Burgund has collected audio recordings from people around the world as they reflect about the ocean. In collaboration with marine biologist Wallace J. Nichols, Burgund has used these stories, including visitor reflections recorded here at the Museum of Science back in February, to create Ocean Voices, which premiered at the California Academy of Sciences in June to honor World Oceans Day and the 100th anniversary of Jacques Cousteau's birthday. In a performance that weaves the recorded stories with live music by Burgund and his band Aesthetic as Evidence and video footage of underwater scenes, Ocean Voices gives us an inspired and inspiring look at a collective human response to the ocean. The Museum of Science is pleased that Artist in Context joins us in presenting this creative interdisciplinary project that helps us to broaden and perhaps even alter our perception and relationship to the oceans of the world. Artist in Context seeks to engender and promote projects like Ocean Voices, which grew out of a research process that involved an artist and a marine biologist working across disciplines to conceptualize a new way of representing the ocean. And now please join me in welcoming Wallace J. Nichols.
Right. Thanks for coming out this afternoon. It's really amazing to be back in Boston. I have a lot of family and friends here, and to bring Ocean Voices back to the East Coast is really an honor, and we're really proud to be here at the Museum of Science. Like Lisa said, Ocean Voices pulls from ideas, deep thoughts, funny stories from all over the world, from people from all walks of life, from scientists and fishermen, kids and beachcombers, moms and dads, people from all continents. If you look at the oceanvoices.org website, you'll see dots representing where all of the voices that have contributed to this project have come from. The reason why we approached this project this way, partly because that's just the way Halsey, the musical genius behind this project, that's just kind of the way he rolls. But also we conceived this project in honor of my childhood hero, Jacques Cousteau. And when we started thinking about how best to honor one of our heroes, we thought, well, he touched so many people in so many ways, and his legacy and through his film and through his speaking and through the way he lived just reached millions and millions of people who then went on to reach millions and millions of more people. So our approach to honoring Jacques Cousteau and his family was to sort of turn that on its head and say to those millions of people who have been touched by him, how would you like to contribute back into this project and describe your relationship with the ocean? So what you're about to hear is not a movie about the ocean. It's not really a song about the ocean. It's something unlike anything else I imagine you've experienced in the form of media. So I would just ask you to take all of your preconceived notions, all of your previous experiences with theaters, TV shows, documentaries, underwater films, even Jacques Cousteau's amazing stuff. Just take that all and put it to the side for now. Open up your mind, open your ears wide, and open your heart and listen to the voices, listen to what the people have to say about the ocean. And please join me in welcoming Halsey Burgund and Aesthetic Evidence's band. Thanks.
All land, no different continents.
From space, it would not look blue.
There wouldn't be living things. No water to drink for the fish. Or maybe no fish.
Very hard. Not as much animals. And yeah, very hard.
I think the world would be kind of like dry and like empty, not as like big, more flat and dirt and stuff, and not as healthy and green.
So I don't think maybe there'd be much like chance of surviving that long.
Sad, dry, and boring. And no sea turtles.
Probably pretty unhealthy.
Well, I think we'd probably starve because we need water to live, and I wouldn't think there would be any life on Earth because nothing can live without water.
Less water, more countries needing help because sometimes we kind of rely on the livestock that the ocean supplies.
In fact, without an ocean, our Earth wouldn't even be here. It would be somewhere else in another galaxy. The animals in the ocean wouldn't be able to survive because they would have nowhere to live and no food. In fact, Earth would probably be a meteor passing by.
So dry and
French fries with salt.
No water, no seafood, no jobs.
We would never be able to go to the beach and have fun, and we would be able to see all these the sea animals, and we would be able to eat like fish, crab, and stuff like that.
The world coming to an end. There wouldn't be as much freedom. It'd be really horrible, and people wouldn't get to see the beautiful. We wouldn't be able to go to the beach, shoot sea creatures, marine.
A world without oceans is a world without peace. Half of the world lives in there.
I like the ocean. I'd rather stick with it.
Also, it would make transportation very difficult, and Earth wouldn't be quite as pretty from outer space.
I think that would be horrible, because we'd all be landlocked, and I don't know, swimming might not even exist, and that would just be weird.
I like the ocean. I'd rather stick with it.
How can we live without it? I mean, really?
I like the ocean. I'd rather stick with it.
How can we live without it? I mean, really?
That'd be a pretty sad world.
Would truly be a piece of my childhood missing.
Every school year, you count down the days to that first real summer day where you can go with your friends or your family, and you can just drive.
I like the ocean. I'd rather stick with it.
Hot, gross car.
I like the ocean. I'd rather stick with it.
I don't know, singing to the radio and looking out the window, thinking, school's finally out, and I'm going to the beach.
Probably be a lot of mess going on.
And just swim in the ocean.
I see a world without oceans as a place without having depth. Land extends on forever, but the ocean expresses a deep unknowing. There's just, you go in and you can just keep going.
I know very well what a world without oceans is like. I was born and raised in Madrid, right in the center of the Iberian Peninsula, surrounded by ocean, yet deprived of it. I grew up in a world with no beach, no harbor, no lighthouses, and the ocean existed only in the realm of my dreams, as a place full of mystery, unfathomable, uncharted, teeming with perilous sea monsters and harboring sunken civilizations. It was the ocean of Jules Verne, of Emilio Salgari, of Pío Baroja, and of many books of discovery and conquest of the Americas that I read voraciously. But then, every summer my parents would take me and my sister on vacation to the ocean. It was a little family tradition that he who would spot the ocean first and call it out loud would be the master of the ocean during the vacation, and the others would have to ask for his permission before bathing in it. I remember the tension and the anticipation as our car drove on the winding road, knowing that at any moment a turn of the road could reveal the majestic immensity of the great blue. El mar, the ocean, I would cry and stick my head off the window and take in the briny air and relish in my good fortune. For 2 weeks I will inhabit a world with oceans and be the king of the seas and build my castle in the sand, chase little fish, play with the waves, and be as close to happiness as a person can be.
Rain from the sky, or like tears from people.
When the land was all water, and then volcanic eruptions formed the land.
Cataclysmic events in the formation of the planet and in, I guess, the early periods of the planet where there was an ice age, and then the great oceans were formed by the melting of the ice, and the oceans came and went and came and went, and then finally, we're in this current period.
A giant, even vaster, big blue, but also boiling water and extreme tides and just this immense activity.
I think the ocean came
from the source, from the elements, from the cosmic energy. The ocean comes from nothing and it comes from everything.
I'm not really sure. It seems like it's always been here since the world was created, but there's probably a lot of science behind it.
I think the ocean's just it was just there right when the Earth had come, and I think it might have been maybe like the steam of like the volcanoes from the early times or something like that.
I feel like the ocean came from heaven.
I think that there was the first thing that there's the whole world was ocean, but then it froze. Some of it froze over, and it became smaller, and land came up.
All the water accumulating, I guess, or maybe a lake getting bigger.
I love the idea of a primordial soup.
I think the ocean came from a big puddle that it kept raining and raining and raining and raining and raining, and all of it kept going down, and it didn't have time to evaporate, so it kept making a big ocean.
The puddles of the earth.
From like rivers.
The puddles of the earth.
Streams and stuff.
From Antarctica, the melting icebergs.
The oceans came from the center of the Earth. The oceans came from the center of the Earth.
Water and holes, like rain.
I think it came from the core of the Earth.
Maybe it came from underground.
What a question. Yeah, it's difficult. I definitely don't have the answer to that one.
I think it's partly the same as what he said, but I think it was a lot smaller, and then when it rained, it became bigger.
There might have been a big hole.
I think the oceans came from the sky. Maybe the water cycle is incomplete or something, and it always rains a little more than gets evaporated for some strange reason. But when I think of oceans, I think of rain, so it probably is from the sky.
Hey, the ocean came from the moon, and that's why the moon has no water, except for a little bit residue.
Heat and gases from the beginning of this planet, when it was mostly volcanic action and activity, and spewing heat into the air and causing condensation, and that raining down, collecting over
continent is formed by
probably a few billion years into the planet that we know it is today.
I'm going to say the ocean has always been on Earth since it was created, I guess.
Oxygen and hydrogen formed to make water, and so oxygen and hydrogen is very old. That comes from the very early parts of the universe when protons first formed. They
think
captured
the ocean came
electrons to make
from
hydrogen.
God.
But to get
and I
oxygen,
believe
you
that,
actually
he made the ocean, and then
some
the
processing.
land came after the ocean.
Originally, there was just hydrogen and helium.
Each
and
continent is formed by a
when
turtle.
that clumped
Each
together
continent is
to
formed
form
by
the
a
first
turtle,
stars,
which
and
is
the
just sitting on
stars,
another turtle.
you get nuclear reactions because the densities are so high, and those nuclear reactions process hydrogen and
Maybe
helium
like the
into
creation of Earth had
heavier
something to do
elements,
with it.
and that's where oxygen was formed.
The ocean
And
came from
I don't actually
God,
know how the Earth
because he
in
made it.
particular ended up with the amount of water that it has. Not all planets have a lot of water, but luckily it did. And so now we have water. We definitely need it.
I think it came from God.
I'm gonna say like oxygen levels or something, making that up. It like hydrogen and oxygen molecules come together and create water.
Once I was in the ocean in Samoa, off the coast somewhere of American Samoa, with a family that lived there, and they regularly went out spear fishing, and this was like their weekend thing that the whole family would do, is make an earth oven and go hunt some wild boars. And it was really awesome. And I mean, we were just in the water all day long, and the guy would eat the fish cheeks when they would catch the fish, because apparently that was a real delicacy, and offered it to me, but I didn't feel like eating it. So I'm in the water, and it's just beautiful. I mean, just jaw-droppingly beautiful. The temperature of the water is like a tepid bath. It's just so warm and so lovely. And then the sun started to go down, and I got a little afraid. Like, I haven't really been in the ocean in the dark. And they, were not ready to stop. They had all kinds of stuff yet to do. And the boat was somewhere nearby, but not that close. And I was by myself in this huge ocean. And as the sun went down and it got dark, I was just there with my fear, just surrounded by water. And I looked down, and suddenly I saw that the squid, which we had been watching earlier, that they were bioluminescent. And they were jetting, little tiny squid, jetting across the surface of the water, which is maybe about 15 feet down or so. And then some of the organisms that live right on the surface of the ocean floor, they glow. They glow in the dark. And it was the most exhilarating and just like effervescent kind of joy that I had. And it was as if that all of that sparkling beauty was just like there for me, dazzling me.
I like the ocean when it's raining and it's warm, because you can't tell the difference between the rain and the ocean.
It's cold water against your body and going under the water and the waves slashing over you and swimming calmly in the cold breeze.
It feels like you are a tiny little speck of nothing.
It was mysterious because it went so far.
Like, oceans go on forever. They take up the majority of our Earth.
I go to the ocean to
It's really
feel
cool if you think about,
as if
like,
I could find something
how
deeper.
many other people
It was mysterious
or
because it went so
things are
far.
in that water while you are, like, just in the water. There's seaweed.
It's
there's
vast. I
I
could
don't know,
imagine like
tiny
you're on a
little
boat in the ocean and
microscopic
it's just
algae
kind of
and
just out
little
there in the
creatures,
sort of almost
and
like an
there's,
unknown.
like, beautiful fish.
But you also feel a
reefs
sense of fear because there's just a vast expanse of water around you.
It was mysterious because it went so far.
And realizing that the ocean is so huge, and I was just a little speck in this enormous, vast envelope, really, this seamless world with so many other creatures and so much wonder.
Amazing force that we don't really understand a lot about. I think it's really cool.
Being in the ocean feels like being hugged by someone very wet and very cold. And maybe like someone who hugs too much and too long. And then when you get out of the ocean, it feels like they're still trying to pull you back in.
I feel totally held and nourished. I can relax and let go.
Once you're under the water, in the water, you fly.
When you go out into deep water, you almost feel weightless, and you sometimes feel really scared because you can't see what's below you.
Then I feel weightless. And I love to lie on my back and look at the sky and paddle around in this weightless, almost like air that I can float in.
Wavy motion of the ocean. It's nice.
If I want to know what it feels like to be in the ocean, I just have to close my ears shut. And then it feels like I'm floating in the ocean. And there's a low, kind of throbbing noise, and it also feels like being in the womb.
Still, it feels like a different kind of freedom.
Sparkly.
It's like floating in infinity and entering another world.
To still feel that movement, to feel the up and down of the water hours and hours and hours after you've left the ocean.
I always want to be near the coast, and I like the feeling that I'm at the end of I'm at the edge.
Sometimes I can feel its vivid moods, often very gentle, but sometimes very mischievous, boisterous. Feels like it speaks to us, gushing with excitement, while mostly whispers through its waves.
It feels refreshing, and you're always happy in the ocean, and I love being in the ocean.
Free. Free.
I love going to the beach and just letting the waves roll off my body as I dive and just roll down my back. It has to be one of the most gorgeous things. I feel like I'm a part of nature when that happens. I feel like the kind of excitement, relaxed, amazing. I'm missing it right now. I miss the ocean. I wish I lived in the ocean. I think the ocean feels like cool mistiness.
For me, that's where it all comes together. For me, that's where it all comes together. Out in the ocean, that's where things are clear.
When I body surf, I feel like I'm the surfer.
Feels like a very cold, smooth blanket.
Squishy.
The ocean's like sort of never like the same from day to day. It's like one time, they'll just get floated in black.
You feel like you are engulfed in a whole different world, a place where it can be magical.
I love falling to sleep at the sound of the waves. It's so soothing. It's the natural lullaby for the world.
When you're in the water, you can either fight it or go with its flow.
Every time I go into the ocean, every time I go into the ocean, every time it is almost like receiving an opportunity to go into the ocean in my life. And all of that exists with our relationship with the ocean. Every time I go into the ocean, every time that I can enter the water and dissolve the ocean, the stress of the day, or I can enter the water and have a new adventure. But each time is a different journey, and that journey is very personal. It is a place to forget what happens on a day-to-day basis and just enjoy the sensation of being. An opportunity to reconnect, not just with nature, but with oneself. There is always something going on underneath the waves. There is always something going on underneath the waves. There is a certain simplicity that exists there, almost like a meditation.
Being enveloped by water
brings a sense a sense of connecting directly with the essence that breathes life, a feeling of becoming one with the planet.
Encompassed by the water. Encompassed by the water.
And having the chance to dive in, to actually be immersed in the ocean is such a privilege.
Whenever I'm in the ocean, I always have this feeling of being in the body of a huge goddess, really beautiful.
I tend to think of it as giant systems like that, not just we're 100 miles from the ocean and it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with me, everything to do with everything.
Exciting, invigorating. And it's a chance to pretend to be something else. A penguin, a sea lion, a sea star, a fish, a shark.
The ocean is made up of so many different things that kind of make up what we are.
So I just sat there and watched them for a few seconds playing and swimming around each other, and then all of a sudden all three dolphins went underwater and took off towards the shore to go in even shallower water. And the last thing I saw of them was all three of them were body surfing a wave in towards the shore, and I could see these little trails coming off, kind of like a little wake behind them that were right under the surface.
And it made me feel like I was part of the ocean and part of the school of fish.
It's just really amazing to me to think this great big, wonderful creature would have any curiosity about, this, tub full of tourists.
And just be able to see out in the ocean in all directions and just imagine like the whales and the fish and the life down below me all through everywhere.
And if you're very careful, not. And if you're very careful, and if you're very careful, not moving too quickly, quite gentle, many, many animals and fishes will come right up.
But I mean, there's underground like aquifers and things that are not connected to the ocean. But
at one point, that water was probably in the ocean.
Yeah, maybe, huh?
Any day away from the ocean is like a small death. Any day I spend, any day I live.
We need it to bring us hope and life.
To be in the ocean is to be free. The water cleanses your soul and opens your heart.
We've done lots of cool stuff in the water together. So the ocean brings people together.
One with all of the things that live in the ocean and completely and utterly in the moment, present and alive.
Sometimes just magical with the waves early in the morning before classes back then when I was in college.
It's like being a bird in the sky. Enamel in the water is like crossing.
I just am able to open up and be who I want to be. Because
Yeah, I guess I kind of am homeless, ashore.
I love being in the ocean. It's like having your mother cradling you and moving you back and forth, and it's a completely different experience. When you get out of the ocean, you can hardly find your footing on earth.
It's the ocean, and it's not going to judge you on anything. In the ocean, you feel free and yourself.
It's more about a feeling. And to me, that's just about feeling home.
Ocean is the heart of the planet. Ocean goes with tides. Makes me feel happy all the time.
I see pollution, I feel sad. Ocean is part of my history, of the history of my family. Ocean nurtures life all around. It gives us climate, winds. We play with ocean. Its colors are part of my soul and of the soul of me. Ocean is silence, and at the same time is music. Ocean is mirror of life. Comes and goes. It grows and diminishes all the time. Water, marine water, is our great teacher. I hope everybody can understand that.
Would it be possible to turn all the lights up just a bit inside here? Because I can't see anything from here, and it's slightly strange. Well, I told you that would be different from anything you may have otherwise experienced in terms of ocean media. One of the reasons why that was the case is because when we opened up this project, we didn't know where it was going. And that's by design, until the voices started to come in and the recordings started to be made. And then everyone who participated in this project and shared their voice created it. And then Halsey and the other musicians responded to the voices that were shared by people who care about the ocean. And when I listen to it, as I have several times and through rehearsals and listening to recordings of it and live performances, you hear the sadness at first, prompted by the question, describe a world without an ocean. So that's the first question. And you hear the sadness especially in the children's voices, about just imagining a world without the ocean. And then it goes into describing where the ocean comes from. And you get this progression of ideas that are beautiful and whimsical, and some very scientific, and some very far out and cosmic, and some very spiritual. And then the piece evolves to a set of questions that they don't ever appear in the piece. And you can read those questions on the website. And those are just the prompts, but their response and what became Ocean Voices were the answers to those questions that were set up in a way to provoke people to share their deep feelings as well as their knowledge about the ocean. And I think this piece gets at that in a really different sort of way, and it's owes a lot to Halsey's artistic intelligence to be able to take that set of questions and all of those thousands of responses and weave them into a narrative and then put the appropriate music to it. And I just want to add to that the comment on the visual component of this piece is very storyless. You didn't notice any ocean characters. There's no Nemo in this film. There's no sea turtle that comes by and steals the show. There's no dolphin or whale that leaps out of the ocean and takes you out of the voices, right? The visual component keeps you with the voices as much as possible while being inspiring and beautiful and taking you on an underwater journey. And the videographers who provided us with that footage were very, very generous. And many of those shots are very long, single continuous shots. That's hard to do that seamlessly and not bump into something and have your camera bounce, or just to float across a reef through the fish and keep the camera steady. And so those long shots put together take the emphasis off really kind of takes the emphasis off of the visual while being stunning at the same time. So that's sort of at least my marine biologist sort of take on what was going on there. But to bring that kind of to what's going on now in our ocean, the sadness, the love of the ocean, the freedom, the theme, I feel free, the ocean is freedom, that continually comes up. That is our ideal when we think of the ocean, when we dream of the ocean, when we vacation at the ocean. The opposite of that is what we have right now in many places, including the Gulf of Mexico. When you're just returned from 2 weeks working on oil spill response in the Gulf of Mexico, and when you're there, if you're somebody who loves being in the ocean, it's very sad. And the last thing you feel is free. I felt the least free I've ever felt, spending my time as a marine biologist and being on the water in the feels like temperature in New Orleans off the coast of Louisiana was 115. That's really hot. And it must have been like 400% humidity. That's what it felt like. I know that's not even possible, but that's what it felt like. And what you want to do is jump in the ocean and be free, but you can't because it's full of oil and dispersant, Corexit, mixed with oil. So it's considered unhealthy. So some of these feelings we have about our ocean that connect us with it intellectually and emotionally and spiritually and personally, the reasons why we go to the ocean to be free, to be renewed, to relax, to be inspired, to dream, to think clearly, to meditate, whatever those reasons, to recreate, to surf, to swim, to scuba dive, to snorkel, to kayak, all of those things. In a lot of places around the world, we're taking that away from people because of the way we treat the ocean. And for many, many reasons, that's bad. But for that one sort of angle on it, the people who live along the Gulf Coast, who really took for granted going to the beach and going into the water, and who now can't, you feel that. You see it on people's faces. You hear it in their voices. You hear it in the conversations. That being an ocean person was an important part of who they were, who they are. They may not even have realized it until it was taken away, and that's part of what's going on in the Gulf. I went there to, theoretically, I went there as a sea turtle biologist to rescue sea turtles, and I did work on that project, but I came away with a much different, broader understanding of how I could contribute to the response to the oil spill. As a scientist / journalist / advocate, I saw my role as one of being a communicator of what's going on to my children. That was one of my responsibilities, was to make little videos and send them back to my daughter Grace and my other daughter Julia, and to show them what's going on firsthand. Hey guys, this is your dad. I'm at the oil spill in the Gulf, and here's what I see. And I was able to send videos back home. And then some of those videos went to CNN. Some of them went on to other websites and blogs. And I was able to sort of communicate as a scientist, I guess occasionally letting my emotions hang out, which I don't have a problem doing as a scientist. And that's a whole other conversation. But really making that connection, a personal connection with the ocean through the eyes of a scientist. So what I'm seeing as a really important, maybe somewhat new role for scientists going forward is this role of the scientist journalist. When scientists in the field are reporting on what they're seeing in real time, not waiting for peer review, although the peer review process is an incredibly important part of science, there's a time and a place for scientists to describe things as they're happening directly to the public that's interested, without any filters, without any censorship, without anybody buying the information or altering it. And I think that as much as anything, was one of the things I learned by spending time in the Gulf, and how important it is for scientists to communicate what they see directly to people who care to listen. And there are new tools available to do that. This museum is involved with many of those technologies. Lots of organizations are embracing new communication technology to allow us to do that. So I think if there are questions either about Ocean Voices or about the oil spill in the Gulf that I may be able to address, we can segue to that. And if people need to cruise out of here to go to their next show, please do that too. Oh yeah, yeah. Halsey.
Thank you. Oh, wow.
Any technical questions about any of that, please direct them to Halsey.
Don't ask us about that at all.
No.
Neither of us can answer those questions.
We had some really big fights and headlocks and noogies and stuff.
I hate humpbacks. No, it's a good question, and it is certainly something that we thought about and considered. I ended up, after collecting some recordings and sort of trying to work them in, I ended up feeling that they sadly became more of a distraction to me than they actually were a help. I mean, you're of course completely right that the sound of the ocean itself is largely that of the animals that inhabit the ocean, and I didn't feel that there was a way that I could represent them faithfully within the context of the music and with the voices, so I decided to leave them out. Somebody else might have made a different decision, but that's what we did.
We did talk about it. And we didn't fight much over it, but it
Jay misses the humpbacks.
Yeah.
It works as it is, and I'd love to watch
Thank you. Thank you. I think there was a question in the back. That was.
My question is that how did you choreograph the music that you had in the stage with the waves of the ocean, where the ocean itself is the music, the waves of the ocean itself is music. You know, what made you put it together so that it did not make it so that it blended as one?
Well, it was a lot of trial and error. Honestly, it was. I recorded a lot of wave sounds at different locations, and I ended up listening to those over and over and over. And I tried to pull rhythms and beats out of the waves, out of the sloshing of the waves on the beach or on the rocks or different areas like that. And I took a few key slices of those waves and the rhythms that they created, and I started looping them and layering them on top of each other. And then the idea was for the beginning of the piece to sort of start with these sounds and seamlessly transition from natural sounds of the ocean into, I guess, I don't want to call them less natural, but the more human-created sounds, which were the sounds of the string players, the sounds of the voices and whatnot. So I really looked at the rhythms, the natural rhythms of the ocean, and tried to pull from those and compose the music in similar tempos and whatnot. So I hope that answers the question. Sort of.
I have a question about the Gulf of Mexico, actually. And sort of the same question, two different ways. One is you hear there's news now that it's not as bad as they thought, that the oil's not everywhere, but they don't know what's going on way down below.
Right.
And sort of the same thing is they used all this dispersant, but they don't really know what it's going to do long term. And I'm wondering if that's sort of those long term things or more invisible things, if you have any insight into those.
Right. Yeah. Well, one thing I can say is that there are some recent studies that have just happened by several large oceanographic institutions with ROVs and sonar that have looked at what's going on beneath the surface, and that work has produced a massive amount of data that is being cranked on literally as we speak to produce a report on what we don't see. So the update is sort of not much of an update except to say it's coming and it will be interesting. Stuff hasn't just disappeared. There are 100+ million gallons of crude oil plus 2 million gallons of dispersant mixed together in a very large petri dish with a lot of warm water and some storms coming through to shake it up, a lot of bacteria and a lot of animals, and then obviously the human population. And this is a gigantic, global scale experiment, really. And we're just at the beginning of it, frankly. If other large oil spills are any indication, we're talking about decades where we'll see the impacts. I'm hopeful that the experiment will go down the path of least harm, the quickest possible recovery, but we haven't done this before. This hasn't happened before. It hasn't happened in that place at that scale before. So we'll see. I mean, that's however you look at it, the impacts have been huge. Walking on the beach and walking in the marsh grasses that are just completely buried under asphalt with dead mangroves, and nobody's cleaning that stuff up at the moment. It would be like cleaning up your asphalted driveway. So there's some very acute impacts that are obvious, and those are the ones we usually see on TV. And then there are some less obvious long-term sort of chronic ecosystem stress impacts that may not kill animals, but they stress them out. It may not kill people, but they stress our bodies out. And that has repercussions on ecosystem health and on human health that will be continued to be studied over the next several decades. And I can say that the stress on us and on the people alone. You know, not talking about animals that are killed by oil. The stress on the communities, the human communities, the animal communities, is massive. Not to be underestimated. If you are an oysterman and you have spent your life fishing, collecting oysters, and you know nothing else, and you don't know how to read and you don't know how to write, but you know how to get oysters, there's nothing more stressful than to see the thing you love, the source of your identity, your income, the way you support your family, the way your father and his father and his father have supported their family, to see that just removed is incredibly stressful. And we know from any way you look at it, what does stress do? It causes disease. We know that. I mean, that's all the literature in the world shows that stress leads to disease in every species. So we've got a stressed out system of people and animals, and the response to that is going to be disease, no matter what. Yeah.
To go back to the Ocean Voices, I was really struck with the range of responses, how some were very technical and factual and others were incredibly whimsical. I'm curious if there were any sort of outlier responses that maybe were shockingly different or that maybe surprised either of you into thinking about the subject in a different way.
That's a good question. I tend to like the outliers the most, actually.
You
probably heard a bunch of them.
Really, I was surprised, and Halsey's been doing the voice capture work for a lot longer than I have. I was really surprised at two things. How difficult it is to get people to record just their voice. Getting people to submit videos to YouTube seems to be pretty easy, because getting people to write things, comments on blogs on the internet, that's easy too. People just let it hang out and say things they probably shouldn't say. People upload photos, no problem. But when you ask for just someone's voice, it's very, very personal in a way that I didn't expect. I thought it'd be easier to get people to record their voice. It's very difficult. It takes a lot. Sometimes repeated requests and occasionally nagging when you really want somebody to come on, just record. And then we made an iPhone app that made it even easier, you would think. So that was one thing we learned, or I learned.
Just to jump in for a second, the reason, I mean, Jay said that it's potentially because it's such a personal thing, and the voice, to me, that's the reason I want to use voices, is because it is so personal. It does cut right to the core of who we are, and there's something about the voice that is much more than those comments on the blogs, or if there's video too, maybe the video is sort of somehow distracting with the visual, but if you just have the voice, just the spoken voice, there's something that, to me, is very personal and very direct to the core of the individual. So, sorry.
And the other thing was very few, possibly none of the. So your worst case scenarios, you open this website up to the world and say, share your voice, and some weirdo gets on there and starts talking weirdness. I don't even want to, I mean, anything weirdness. Is possible, right? Inappropriate weirdness. We were open to that, that somebody could get online, just press a button and record inappropriateness into Ocean Voices. And obviously, there are filters before it ends up, wasn't going to be performed, but that didn't happen. It's just one more example of people are asked, or challenged, and given those opportunities. It's like the honor till at the strawberry stand down the road from my house. They have very few problems on California Highway 1 with people stealing money, almost none. People sort of rose to the occasion in this case, and thought about what they were going to say, and said some beautiful things. And so Halsey gets the first notice that a new voice has come in, And really, I don't think there were any that we had to kind of say, whoop, that goes into the little box on the other hard drive where it goes away.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the voices that you heard were filtered through, my artistic license or whatever it is. I obviously couldn't put over 1,000 voices, into the piece. So, I did choose the ones that I felt best represented what I wanted to convey with the piece. But yeah, there really weren't any. I mean, there were, some that were
hard to hear.
Some were hard to hear. Some that were perhaps a little less relevant, maybe. But I mean, they're all relevant because the people are there contributing and being a part of something, and that was great. I have it set up so I get an email every time a voice is contributed. So I always get so excited. I see a new Ocean Voice.
And
so
you know that you can go on oceanvoices.org, record your answers to any of the questions, decide you didn't like it, re-record, submit it, and then play back a collage of your choosing of who you want to hear and what questions you want to hear, and it'll play back a very simplified version of this. It's really cool. It's very interactive, so you can get immediate feedback and play it back kind of in including your own voice. And when you submit your voice through the magic of Twitter, a tweet goes out that a new voice has been contributed with a little phrase selected from what you said in quotes with a link to anybody who wants to hear your recording or that recording can go and check it out. So it's built in several ways to be very active and very interactive so that you get feedback immediately if you want to play your voice mixed in with others. If you want to make it the sound you listen to while you're working, you could pipe it throughout any audio system and listen to it. And it's pretty fun. You can select. You just want kids' voices, male or female, age range.
Which response? Only people talking about how they feel in the ocean versus.
Which questions?
The iPhone app does that as well.
Yep.
And hopefully the Android app soon. Not quite yet. Yes.
I was just wondering if people seem to prefer answering particular questions, if they were more willing to talk about what the ocean meant to them, or if they're more nervous about having to speculate where the ocean came from. Did you find any preferences for what they would answer?
Yeah, there were definitely preferences, and I should preface that by saying that the questions were very carefully thought out to try to elicit the most sort of open and honest responses from everybody.
There were no yes or no questions.
Yeah, no yes or no questions, and the idea was to sort of, and the ordering of the questions all sort of gained, sort of designed to help open you up a bit. But there was one question which was I thought as the entree question, which is describe what makes up the ocean, and that seemed to be very popular. I guess it's kind of easy, but I mean, it was really kind of heartbreaking, very heartbreaking, because as time went on, I mean, we started this over a year ago, and as time went on and the oil spill happened, people started saying to that question, well, the ocean's made up of oil. And it was, especially when kids say that, it's just hard to hear. The kids are talking, oh, there's fish, and there's sand, and there's waves, and there's salt, and then there's oil. I know the oil isn't supposed to be there, but there's oil, and there's more oil, and it's just, but that question was probably the sort of favorite, if you will. But I don't know, there weren't any ones that were categorically neglected. So.
Hi, Halsey.
Hi.
I have a question about the performance aspect, and that is, I know that there's a general sequence of the voices as you go through the performance. I know you've done the performance before, you'll do it again this evening. Is there any improvisation that happens when you select the voices for the performance, or do you already know kind of which voices you're going to be using before you go into it?
Right. There is a little bit of improvisation, but not as much as some of my other pieces. Actually, this piece is with the visuals, it's sequenced, so there isn't quite as much flexibility in terms of really extending sections and that kind of thing. But I do, for each part of the piece, and there's pretty much 4 parts of the piece, I have a different set of voices that are laid out on my device over
You
there.
should go just
My mouth. Well, I don't know if we're still on. Are we still turned on, Bill? Sure, we can be. So at the beginning,
All land, no different continents.
we have kids talking about what the world would be like without oceans, and
You've never been able to go to the beach and have
so so this is all kids throughout here. And then as the piece progresses, the next part is sort of where did the ocean come from? So
Rain from the sky or like tears from people.
I love the idea of the ocean being tears from people. That's pretty awesome.
from like rivers, and there might have been a big hole.
I think there are more oceans out there, yeah.
So this is kids and adults all sort of in that, and I definitely generally sort of play them relatively similarly, but there is some flexibility built in, but I laid them out on the keyboard in order to be a guideline for what I wanted in the piece. Let's see the next section. Oh, who's this?
I like the ocean when it's raining and it's warm.
So that section is more about what it feels like to be in the ocean, and so on and so forth. But yeah, there's a little bit of improvisation, but not a huge amount. And there's no improvisation on the strings. When they start improvising, then I know they could very well. But
so they're playing off of a score. So Halsey's written the music, and they're playing off of the score right there, and it's sort of cool.
It's real music.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is regarding the visual. I think that was all coral reef systems.
Mostly.
So, why weren't there other parts of the ocean in there?
There's nothing but coral in the ocean, right? Isn't that true? That, for better or for worse, that is primarily because of the nature of the two videographers who donated their footage for this project. We did not have a very large budget, which would enable us to go out and pay people or procure lots of different types of footage. As much as I would have liked that, because you're right, it is coral centric for sure, and that coral's beautiful, but it's not the only thing out there. That's true. So.
And there's this project is, as I've imagined it, has a lot of future to it, and it will continue to evolve as new voices come in, as new venues invite it to be performed, and there's some interest in creating a dome version that could be projected inside a planetarium or another kind of dome, and then that's a whole different production in terms of the visuals. That would look weird if you projected it on a dome, but there are ways to do it with 6 or 7 or 8 cameras going at the same time that would make you feel like you're in the ocean, and that's a bit of a dream project and involves significant amounts of time and money, and so, but we'll come back and do that one.
Dreams can happen, yes. Yes.
Yeah, Jay, as you know, I'm passionate about scientists as advocates. I totally endorse that. One of the questions I have from your recent trip to the Gulf, though, was there's been a lot of talk about the fact that some of the recovery efforts are actually having a negative impact. And there's certainly been a huge difference of opinion about whether or not building of berms was a realistic sort of solution to this crisis.
Right.
So while scientists can be advocates, how do you get around the question of if you have 5 scientists in a room, you're going to get 5 opinions?
Yeah. Well, there's a fair amount of, let's just take one simple thing in my area of expertise, sea turtles. Some people think we should be catching turtles and just taking them out of the Gulf and releasing them on the other side of Florida so that they won't end up in the oil, even if they haven't gotten into the oil. Some people think we should be moving all of the hatchlings and releasing them on the other side of Florida, or maybe relocating the eggs. And so various projects are underway and have been permitted and approved and are funded, and eggs and hatchlings are being moved away from the oil. And then in other parts, say in Texas, the hatchlings are being released into the Gulf, not knowing if they're going to swim into the oil. You know, I shared my opinion on all of those things, and it was taken into account, and you know, that's all you can really do. At the end of the day, there's the law, and the law allows regulations, and laws allow certain things and don't allow other things in the amount of time we're working with. So differences of opinion, and some, you know, in the case of sea turtles and many other things, we are educated guesses. There's a huge amount of information that we would love to have about baby turtles once you release them that we just don't have yet. And so you base your decision on a fair amount of guesswork, although you don't usually call it guesswork. So that's really what's going on. And sometimes protecting something, say, you know, homes, trumps protecting the ecosystem. So you get, you know, structures built or berms built, and it's this push and pull back and forth, and you just try to contribute what you know and be clear, and the process sort of unfolds. We know that you know, science is not driving most of the decisions in the world right now. Other forces and other interests.
It's the artists, right?
The artists, yeah, it's the musicians that are in charge, apparently.
Yes.
Especially on the Gulf Coast. Yeah. And I attended went to the federal courthouse and attended the hearings on the offshore drilling moratorium. I was the only guy in a sea turtle t-shirt and flip-flops in the room. I was the only guy who wasn't wearing a suit and tie, in fact. But it was eye-opening for me as a scientist to participate in those hearings and see how decisions are made. So a lot, you know,
So if there are these different solutions being applied, because of time constraints, obviously, without the scientific background, are there at least some measures being put in place to assess, because rather, like you say, this is a giant experiment,
right.
Are there measures being put in place to track the effectiveness of these solutions? In other words, so that, God forbid, if we have another similar situation, we're able to say, okay, translocation was a good solution or a bad solution. Right. So are those checks and balances being put in place with these short-term solutions so we can make longer-term judgments?
Sometimes. Sometimes they are. There are, again, other factors, you know, so the funding may or may not be available to set up the monitoring one may want to set up. And then there are other reasons why someone or some institution may not want that monitoring to occur. Louisiana has a fair amount of sort of not above board kind of politics that goes on. So that is all playing in as well. Personally, as a scientist in the Gulf, I had pretty much unrestricted access to everything that I wanted access to. I was never asked, other than getting on the airplane in San Francisco, when I was asked for my ID to check in, I was never asked my name or for my ID at any point during the 2 weeks I was in the Gulf, on the water, on the land, or in the air over you know, what's called ground zero. Contrary to some of the things I'd heard, media and scientists were being corralled and restricted and sometimes intimidated. I didn't experience that, which made me feel pretty good.
Thanks. In the spirit of full disclosure, I am a partner of Jay's and Halsey's on this, but I'm also one of the people that was uncomfortable answering the questions. And in fact, I haven't recorded my voices yet, and I think Jay might have been speaking to me when he was talking about that. But I want to the disclosure is important because I want to congratulate the museum on presenting this out of the box event, and on Halsey for taking on something that artists are not known for celebrating, which is natural phenomena in in collaboration with a scientist, and of course with Jay for taking on an artistic endeavor in full scientist regalia. People are constantly, advocates for the ocean are constantly looking for new ways of motivating people to live like they love the ocean and to take better care of our life support systems. And this is a perfect example of people trying to speak and stir up different thoughts, different emotions that will trigger response, positive response in terms of taking care of our life support systems. The museum has provided a venue for that, a really outstanding venue, and I think that success of it is indicated by that there is more questions really about the artistic nature of this project and the uniqueness of it than there are about what you would normally expect, which would be, give us the real deal about what's going on in the Gulf. So congratulations to everybody. It was really awesome.
And thank Tim for helping in a hugely significant way to connect our friends from the Comcot community and the Torres sisters who Tim is, I can't quite tell if Tim is following them around or they're following him around as they travel the eastern seaboard and learn about what's going on here and make connections to bring back to their community where they are an ocean people, as connected to the ocean as any group of people I know, and in particular deeply connected to sea turtles. They're a true sea turtle culture in every way, from turtles as food and turtles as instruments, musical instruments, and turtles as symbols, and in the case of the leatherback turtle, is considered an ancestor, and they sang about that. So Tim is doing amazing work around the world, connecting indigenous leaders, particularly young indigenous leaders, who through those connections get empowered and feel stronger.
Well, we are really honored to have had you, Jay, here in town on the East Coast, and to premiere this piece on the East Coast was a real privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to have the Torres sisters, thank you all very much, and Tim for bringing them, because that was a very special blessing that you gave us. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that the museum is hosting the Whales to Horror exhibit right now. So if you are interested in carrying on an experience this afternoon that has to do with the ocean, you can go climb in a whale's heart and learn more about them. And I myself want to jump in the car and drive down to the Cape and go appreciate what we have. So I appreciate that you all gave us that sentiment this afternoon.
Thanks.
So thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you again at some of our offerings. And there is another performance of this tonight at 6. So please feel free to pass the word. Thanks for coming.